أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وإذ قال ربك للملائكة إني جاعل في الأرض خليفة قالوا أتجعل فيها من يفسد فيها ويسفك الدماء ونحن نسبح بحمدك ونقدس لك قال إني أعلم ما لا تعلمون. وعلم آدم الأسماء كلها ثم عرضهم على الملائكة فقال أنبئوني بأسماء هؤلاء إن كنتم صادقين. قالوا سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. قال يا آدم أنبئهم بأسمائهم فلما أنبأهم بأسمائهم قال ألم أقل لكم إني أعلم غيب السماوات والأرض وأعلم ما تبدون وما كنتم تكتمون. وإذ قلنا للملائكة اسجدوا لآدم فسجدوا إلا إبليس أبى واستكبر وكان من الكافرين. وقلنا يا آدم اسكن أنت وزوجك الجنة وكلا منها رغدا حيث شئتما ولا تقربا هذه الشجرة فتكونا من الظالمين. فأزلهما الشيطان عنها فأخرجهما مما كان فيه وقلنا اهبطوا بعضكم لبعض عدو ولكم في الأرض مستقر ومتاع إلى حين. صدق الله العلي العظيم. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. And mention, O Muhammad, when your Lord said to the angels, indeed, I will make upon the earth a successive authority. They said, will you place upon it one who causes corruption therein and sheds blood, while we declare your praise and sanctify you? Allah said, indeed, I know that which you do not know. And He taught Adam the names, all of them. Then He showed them to the angels and said, inform me of the names of these, if you are truthful. They said, exalted are you, we have no knowledge except what you have taught us. Indeed, it is you who is the knowing, the wise. He said, O Adam, inform them of their names. And when he had informed them of their names, he said, did I not tell you that I know the unseen aspects of the heavens and the earth? And I know what you reveal and what you have concealed. And mention when we said to the angels, prostrate before Adam, so they prostrated, except for Iblis. He refused and was arrogant and became of the disbelievers. And we said, O Adam, dwell you and your wife in paradise, and eat therefrom in ease and abundance, from wherever you will, but do not approach this tree lest you be among the wrongdoers. But Satan caused them to slip out of it and removed them from that condition in which they had been. And we said, go down, all of you, as enemies to one another, and you will have upon the earth a place of settlement and provision for a time. Sadaqallahu al-Aliyyul Azim. Salawat.
Thank you, Brother Mohsen, for the recitation. We have a request for Surah Fatiha for Brother Muhammad Wasi Khan and Kaniz Kubra. Please recite Surah Fatiha. Inshallah, with that, before I invite up our speaker, can I ask all the brothers to kind of come closer? If you want to bring your chairs, too, you guys can kind of bring it closer. And the brothers sitting on the floor, you guys can kind of come up as well, so you kind of create more of a majlis environment, inshallah. And with that, please help me invite up our speaker for tonight, Sheikh Jaffer Muhibullah, with your loudest of salawats.
جعل الحمد مفتاحا لذكري وسببا للمزيد من فضلي ودليلا على آلائه وعظمته ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين أرواحنا له فداء. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا عليكم أنفسكم لا يضركم من ضل إذا اهتديتم إلى الله مرجعكم جميعا فينبئكم بما كنتم تعملون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. جميع المؤمنين والمؤمنات. First and foremost, I give my condolences to each of you on the occasion which we are commemorating in these nights, which is the aftermath of Karbala, the imprisonment of Imam Zain Al-Abidin, the women and children of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdalus salatu wassalam. As we mentioned last night, and also since the beginning of this year of Muharram and Safar, that in Karbala and in the aftermath of Karbala as well, there's a great lesson to be learned. And that lesson that we can learn is understanding how to be healthy in every aspect of our life, and particularly with regards to the aspect that we're speaking about, which is mental wellness. That tragic event that happened, and how the Ahlul Bayt, how Imam Zain Al-Abidin, how the women and children of the Ahlul Bayt, alayhim afdal salatu wasalam, they dealt with that tragic event, again, teaches us a great lesson about that. We mentioned that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He also commands us in the Quran in verse 105 of Surah Al-Ma'idah to pay attention to ourselves, to one's nafs. Alaykum anfusakum. And this nafs, as we mentioned, has different aspects or different dimensions, or you could, if you want to understand it or frame it in that way, in different connections. In one aspect, our nafs, or who we are, is connected to our physical body, who we are physically. Quite often when you ask someone, hey, do you know this person? Do you know Abdullah? And if they don't really recall who Abdullah is, or, oh, listen, I know a lot of Abdullahs. So either you understand them through their name, or you describe them, oh, he's the one who looks like this or like that. So to some extent, who we are is related to our physical body, but it's not who we are in our entirety. But it is an important aspect, as we said, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's the one who has created us min teen, from clay. He's created everything living from ma, from water. He's created us from the earth. And these are all the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states in the Quran. So that's one aspect that we have to pay attention to, that we mentioned last night. Why? Because it helps, or it will hinder our mental wellness. Sometimes a person may be ill, as we said, a person may be sick, then their entire focus goes into, again, that ailment, or trying to find a cure, discover a cure. But yes, that's only one aspect of their well-being, only one aspect of who they are. The other aspects, as we mentioned, are the intellect, our mind itself, our thought process, the things that we think about, the things that capture our attention, those things that we focus on and we give importance to. This is one aspect of, again, understanding ourselves. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu alaykum anfusakum. Which inshallah we'll discuss this aspect inshallah tonight. The other aspect is our spiritual aspect. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He also says, when He tells the angels that He has created in this earth, basharat, that He's created mankind, He says, وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِن رُوحِي. So that is also a very important aspect of who we are. So who we are physically, who we are mentally, intellectually, and who we are spiritually. All these aspects, they deal with our well-being and our wellness. In fact, some of the experts in this field, as I mentioned in my disclaimer, that, my studies come from, again, I researched the issue. But then I want to understand that, well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has given us this deen. And as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself, He states to the Prophet before he passes away, Al-yawm akmaltu lakum deenakum, that this is a complete deen. And deen, unfortunately, we translate it as religion. No, deen, especially when it comes to Islam, is a complete way of life. It's not simply what someone said, oh, well, religion is just framed to one's religious space, one's masjid or church or to this. No, Islam, al-yawm akmaltu lakum deenakum, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you a complete way of life. And this is why Islam, it addresses every aspect of human life. Every aspect. From physical wellness to mental wellness to spiritual wellness. All of these things Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He addresses in the Quran. All of these things we find in the rawayat of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad alayhim wa afdalus salatu wassalam. So as some of the experts say, that a person who's seeking mental wellness, so one advice that is given, and that is to keep one's mind sharp. Again, they say exercise your brain muscle. And of course, they acknowledge that, yeah, sometimes if a person is dealing with a situation, maybe at the moment they are depressed or they are anxious, they're dealing with anxieties. So yes, maybe in those moments, it may be difficult for a person to, oh, well, I'm going to exercise my mind, because they say, how do you exercise your mind? To learn, read something. So maybe in those moments, yes, it may be difficult to take upon this challenge. However, when a person is at ease, when a person's mind is calm, then they should take that opportunity to read, to strengthen their mind, to strengthen their understanding, to at least try to strive to that intellectual level or intelligence, or gain some sort of knowledge that is beneficial for them. Because that will also, by doing that in those moments of ease, I said that often that will help a person when they're about to go into a situation where it may be stressful for them. It may cause some sort of depression or anxiety. Why? Because now they have something else to focus on. They find something that gives them joy and pleasure. So then they can shift from focusing on that thing which will, take them in a downward spiral, and they can focus on, oh, you know what? This is something I learned. This is something I understood. This is something that I learned that will help me in this situation. And just to give you one example, and where we can also find this, if we read the dua of Imam Zain Al-Abidin, alayhi afdalus salatu wassalam, that he has a very beautiful dua in Sahifatul Sajjadiyah, and it's about being in a state of illness. And again, in quite a few of our ziyarat, or even some of our nohas and some of our things, we always mention this point that, oh, that's Imam Zain al-Abidin, Bimar, Zain al-Abidin, or Marid, that Imam Zain al-Abidin, he was ill. And this is an apparent aspect of his illness, but there we see how Imam Zain al-Abidin, alayhi salatu, he deals with that state. He says that, oh Allah, lakal hamd. He says, I praise you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I don't know that which state is better. Is it a state when I'm ill or a state when I'm healthy? But I praise you in both states. Imam Zain al-Abidin, again, he sees in both states whether he is ill or physically ill, or whether he is healthy. He says there's a cause and there's a reason to praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That when I'm healthy, yes, I can stand and I can make an ibadah, I can engage in dua for a long period of time. So yes, that is the good state of being healthy. So I praise you for this, Allah. He says, but when I'm ill and I'm maybe can't do as much. And he says that, and in that moment, I know that, for one, I'm not engaged in anything that the Katiban, that the two angels, that they will write against me or for me. And as well, that while I'm in that state of being ill, that I know that Allah, that whatever wrong I have done, and this is Imam al-Ma'sum, he's giving us this dua to teach us. Because what wrong has the Imam done? He is Ma'sum. That while I'm in that state of illness, Ya Allah, that ailment that I have been stricken with, that you are alleviating and you are removing from me my shortcomings and my sins. It is a means towards your forgiveness, your maghfirah. So when we can even pick up something as simple as that, it helps us for our mental wellness. As we mentioned, that this aspect of finding mental wellness and wholesomeness, that we call it the aspect where the nafs is connected to the aql, or there's, again, that nafs, or the aspect of the nafs, or the nafs and the aql seem to be one. We'll find that in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He uses this word in different forms, al-aql, 49 times it comes. And of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of those ways He uses it, He tells mankind, أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. Do you not think? Do you not use your intellect? Do you not reflect? So this is an important aspect, one of our deen. And again, we're going to go back to that understanding that a part of mental wellness, or what helps with mental wellness, is religion and is spirituality. Again, the experts are all saying it today, through their research, that they've understood that no, that person who has religion or has a form of spirituality, has a spiritual practice, that mentally they're well off. Or if they are suffering from different mental illnesses, religion is able to help them to cope with it or come out of that particular state. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He uses that, aql. And He asks us, why don't we reflect? Another word that comes and coincides with that, using our mind and understanding, is fiqh. Fiqh. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses this also with regards to the heart, that they have, that mankind has what? قُلُوبٌ لَا يَفْقَهُونَ بِهَا. I mentioned this in my earlier lectures during Muharram about mental illness, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us qulub. Qulub also comes in the meaning of aql, intellect. That is one of the meanings of qalb. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, how come we don't employ that? لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ لَا يَفْقَهُونَ بِهَا. On one hand, what this means is, again, those individuals who fall into a particular category, who are not in the category of being majnoon, those individuals who their intellect is covered, and that's what majnoon means. It's not a derogatory term. In Arabic, jannah means that to cover something. And this is why a baby in the mother's womb is also called what? Janeen. Why? Because the baby is covered. That person who is majnoon, it's not saying that, oh, it's a derogatory, meaning that their intellect is covered. There's an impediment. Could be a chemical imbalance, could be based on several different factors, which we're not going to go into at this point. But those individuals who are not classified as majnoon, that their intellect is not covered, this is who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking about. أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you aql. Do you not use it? Do you not reflect? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you a heart. Again, the intellect. لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ لَا يَفْقَهُونَ بِهَا. But they don't use that intellect. And when we do not use our intellect, this is where we find that ourselves, that we begin to spiral out into this, you can say, realm of not being mentally well. That the smallest of things will, again, bother us or make us depressed. The smallest of things. One of the, again, well-known campaigns of Rasulullah and Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdhalu salatu wassalam. Abu Basira, Jabir ibn Abdullah Ansari, very famous companion of the Ahlul Bayt. Once he was speaking with Imam Bakr, Imam Bakr alayhi salatu went to visit him. And again, this is just to show you that how the Ahlul Bayt teach us the way to think. Again, the positive way of thinking. So he went to visit Jabir, and Jabir was ill. And of course, by the time Jabir, he again reaches to the point that again Imam Bakr alayhi salatu is the Imam. Jabir is very elderly. He's blind, and this is why we call him, he has a name, Abu Basir. So Imam Bakr visited him, he says, Ya Jabir, how are you doing? Kayfa ant? So Jabir, he says that, well, I'm in a situation that I am old and I love my elderly, that my old age, I love this better than my youthfulness. I'm at a point where I am sick and I love my sickness better than my health. Jabir says, I'm a person that, again, I'm old, I'm elderly, I'm close to death. I'm at a stage in my life that I love my closeness to death better than the longness of my life. So Imam Bakr alayhi responded in a very subtle way. So Imam Bakr said, because Jabir asked him, he says, and how are you, O my master? So Imam Bakr, he responded, he says, I'm in a place where I love wherever I am. That if I am in my youth, I love my youth. If I am elderly, I love my elderliness. If I'm healthy, I love my healthiness. If I'm ill, I love my illness. If my life is long and it's extended, then I love my extended and long life. If my life is short and I'm close to death, then I love that I'm close to death. So again, this is Jabir ibn Abdullah Ansari. He's not someone who is just a simple person that, oh, well, he doesn't know anything. Jabir ibn Abdullah Ansari, he is among those companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That is accepted as someone who is a reliable among all of the Muslims, whether they follow Ahlul Bayt or not. They say, oh, if Jabir ibn Abdullah Ansari said it, then it's Sahih, is correct. Jabir ibn Abdullah Ansari, he is that companion that when we hear about the hadith, if we want to call it the hadith, that Fatima Zahra salamullah alayha, she collected the Mashaf al-Fatima. Jabir ibn Abdullah Ansari, he is that individual who saw that Sahifa al-Fatimi. He is one of those individuals that verifies that, yes, that Fatima, she had a Mashaf, which is not the Quran, but a Mashaf that in it is the knowledge of what is to come. Jabir ibn Abdullah Ansari, he's one of those. Jabir ibn Abdullah Ansari, he is that companion who also, we recite Hadith al-Qisa, he's one of those individuals, he's the one who says that, yes, this Hadith al-Qisa, that he heard it and he narrates this. Jabir ibn Abdullah Ansari, he is that companion of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdal that again he lived even during the time of Imam Sadiq, that Imam Sadiq alayhi afdal told Jabir, among the asrar of Ahlul Bayt, among the secrets of Ahlul Bayt. And Jabir ibn Abdullah Ansari, he said that, Ya Mawlai, telling Imam Sadiq, he said, what you mentioned to me is so sweet that I want to tell someone. And Imam Sadiq says, no one has the capacity to understand that but you. And Jabir says that, well, but my tongue just wants to say it because it is so sweet. So then Imam Sadiq, he tells Jabir, he says, yeah, Jabir, he says that in the desert there's a well. He says, go and you stick your head in the well and you tell the well. So what that secret was that was told to Jabir ibn Abdullah Ansari, only the Imam knows, Allah knows, Jabir ibn Abdullah Ansari knows, and that well knows. Subhanallah. So when he's saying that, yes, he loves his state of elderliness, he loves his state of sickness, he loves his state of being close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he is saying this, again, with ma'rifah, that he is pleased with the state. He has no complaints. That his elderliness, his sickness, him being close to death, it doesn't bring him anxiety or depression. Well, he knows that this is what Allah wants. He's okay with it. But Imam's Baqir alayhi wasalam is taking that one step further. He's telling Jabir that whatever state you're in, that if you're young or old, if you're sick or you're healthy, if you're close to death, or if you have a long life, then be pleased with whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you. And this is the way it should be expressed. Not simply in your current state, but whatever it is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. So this understanding that we gain from our deen and from the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdalus wasalam, implying our aql, again, it brings about that mental wellness. It brings about that wholesomeness for us. In fact, in one of the books of our scholars, in Mahajjatul Bayda, which is a book that's compiled by one of our great scholars, Allama Muhsin Fayd al-Kashani. And Mahajjatul Bayda, and this is an interesting book. On one hand, it is it stands as a parallel equivalent to Ghazali's Ihya Ulumuddin. What was the objective of writing these books, the Ihya Ulumuddin and also Mahajjatul Bayda? That they were both written as a revival to Islamic sciences. And Muhsin Fayd al-Kashani, that he lived in the late 16th century or early 16th century. Late 16th century. So Fayd al-Kashani at that time, even Ghazali in his time, that they were concerned about this understanding of our deen. That, again, how is our deen understood? What do people understand about our deen? What are all of those sciences and knowledge that, again, they are in the Quran. They are in the riwayat of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdalus wasalam, but we don't pay attention to them. Or we do not understand how to apply them to our particular time. How do we apply them to our life today? And one of those things, as I mentioned last night, and I've been mentioning, is that this idea and concept of mental wellness. That how do we apply it today? How do we understand this from the Quran, from the guidance of the Quran, from the guidance of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdalus wasalam? And if we're talking about this idea of, again, using our mind, using our intellect in order to help bring about a wholesome and healthy state of being, then we need to understand that what exactly is this intellect and how do we use it? In Mahajjatul Bayda, Fayd al-Kashani, he brings a very beautiful hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Where the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's speaking about the intellect itself, al-aql. What is this? But in this, he's expressing that, well, how do we use our aql? Or what is the purpose of this aql, this intellect? So he says, لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ آلَةٌ وَعُدَّةٌ وَإِنَّ آلَةُ الْمُؤْمِنِ وَعُدَّتُهُ الْعَقْلِ. So that everything has an ala. Ala is a tool or apparatus. So everything has something by which it works or you fix things by. An instrument. Yeah. So this, then he says, وَآلَةُ الْمُؤْمِنِ وَعُدَّتُهُ الْعَقْلِ. This is intellect. Meaning that if we don't pay attention to our intellect, meaning what are we feeding our minds? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu alaykum anfusakum. Pay attention to yourself. Pay attention to what you are putting in your mind. Just as our bodies need food and healthy food in order to, again, be well, again, our intellect also needs proper food, a proper source of nutrition. Yes, on one hand, it comes with food as well, your omega-3s that is good for your mind, good for your brain, but also what you're actually reading, studying, listening to, seeing, reflecting upon. All of these things are important. And there's a difference between the intellect and knowledge. A person can have knowledge, a person can be alim, but not aqil. And I'll say it again because this is something also I taught my children. And when I first told them, they were like, what? What? Yes, a person can be alim, meaning that they can have ilm, they can have, again, they've read a lot of stuff. So they have knowledge, they've collected a lot of things, but then they're not aqil. We'll explain also what this aqil is. So one example, we were watching a documentary on how the world came to be and everything. So at the beginning of this documentary, that the narrator, he says that, well, there is nothing that is arbitrary. A person is a philosopher and, supposedly one of the brightest minds in the world. Yeah, there's nothing that's arbitrary. Everything has a cause. Everything has a cause. So, and this is the point that I told I said, look, yes, he's very smart. He has a lot of knowledge, a lot of ilm. I said, but just wait. That person may have ilm, but they're not aqil. So he goes on and says, and how the world came into being and the Big Bang. And he says, so yeah, the Big Bang may have a cause too. It should have a cause because nothing is without a cause. Nothing is arbitrary. He says, some say it's God, but I don't really believe that, but something caused it. Then he goes on and he says that, oh, well, out of all of this, there's one mistake. He says, and that one mistake is us. Because again, he cannot figure how does life come from immaterial or inanimate objects. He says, there's a mistake. Yes, the gases compressed and water came about, and then this one cell organism came about. He's like, and then from that, it came into become human beings. He was like, that's a mistake. How did that come about? That's when I paused. I said, now do you understand? Knowledge, but not aqil. Alim, but not aqil. If everything has a cause, then what is the cause of this? What is the cause of creation? What is the cause of life? If a rock cannot produce life, then what has caused life? If we go back to that very first principle that person also admitted to themselves, everything has a cause. And there's nothing that's arbitrary. And if you're saying that there's nothing that's arbitrary, then how is this a mistake? How is life a mistake? So knowledge was applied, the intellect was not applied. Knowledge was understood, but it did not form into a person being aqil. So the intellect, the aql of the believer, this is his instrument, this is his tool by which he or she solves any of the issues and their problems in their life. One aspect of the tools. Again, that problem solving has to be wholesome, physically, mentally, and spiritually. Then the Prophet of Allah, he says, لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ مَطِيَّةٌ وَمَتِيَّةُ الْمَرْءِ الْعَقْلِ. That everything has something that it rides upon, something that carries it, something that rides upon, al-matiyya. So he said that ride or that vehicle of a person, of human beings, is aql. In other words, with our intellect, then we map out our life. Quite often we map out our life, we say, oh, well, again, we have, many of us, we map that life out for our children or even sometimes for ourselves. Oh, well, from this age to this age, this is what we do. That, okay, person, our child should be walking by this age. And if they're not walking, we're worried, they should be talking at this age. At this age, they should be graduating from school, or this age, they should be graduating from college. Again, we make a map or even a mental map of our life and how our life should be. So, yeah, again, we have that. وَلِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ دَعَامَةٌ وَدَعَامَةُ الدِّينِ الْعَقْلِ. That everything has a support, and the support of our deen is our intellect. A famous hadith Qudsi that we perhaps all know, that when Jibreel, he came to Adam and he offered Adam three things: intellect, deen, and haya, and again, to be humble. And then so Adam, he chose, he says, I want aql. And at that point, then Jibreel, he told Deen al-Haya, he says, okay, you can go back. But they didn't go. He said, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered them that wherever aql is, wherever the intellect is, then they must stay. Again, there's a connection here between, again, deen and aql. A connection that is inseparable. That the stronger our aql and our intellect is, the stronger our deen is. And I'll give one of the statements of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam a little bit later about that. Then he says, وَلِكُلِّ قَوْمٍ غَايَةٌ وَغَايَةُ الْعُبَّادِ الْعَقْلِ. That for every nation, for every people, there's a raya, there's an objective, there's a goal, which people, they set out to achieve. And again, for most people, and most nations, they set out to be the best of nations. خَيْرُ أُمَّةٍ. There's a goal. But in order to achieve that goal, what do they need? Al-aql. They need al-aql. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَغَايَةُ الْعُبَّادِ الْعَقْلِ. In fact, as a nation of believers and those who serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our goal is aql, to increase the aql. With regards to the verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he states that وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنِّ وَالْإِنسِ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I only created man and jinn in order to worship. Imam Sadiq alayhi wasallam, he says that this ibadah, he says, إِلَّا لِيَعْرِفُونَ. Only to know, to gain understanding. In other words, to apply their intellect, their understanding. So our ibadah, that when we stand up and we are praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's not simply to go through motions. It's not simply exercising our body. It's not simply reciting words. That, oh, well, I'm reciting words, I'm reciting Quran, or I'm making this a dhikr, but there's an objective in that ibadah. Whatever ibadah it is, whether it's our fasting, whether it's our prayer, whether it's our hajj, whether it's giving zakat, whether it's taking care of our family, whether it's working. Working is also our ibadah. A lot of times we don't approach our work in that way. But it is also ibadah. When we look at the riwayat of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdal salatu wasalam, they explain that if a person is going forth to earn a halal living, that this in itself is ibadah. To take care of themselves, to take care of their family, to give sadaqah, to give charity, to build masajid. All of that is ibadah. And it begins with what? Your work. But how do we approach our work? Again, this is part of our, what we can say, cognitive connection with our deen, because it's very much related to this. The intellect, the aql. How are we connecting to our deen intellectually with our aql? Do we separate the things that we do in our life from our deen? Oh, well, my deen is here in the masjid, or when I put my imama on, or my abba and kaba, or I get ready to go to some sort of sacred space, or is our deen constantly connected to us? And we understand, again, this is where the aql comes in. This is where, again, having mental wellness comes in through our intellect and practicing to understand that every aspect of our life, again, Islam, al-yawm akmaltu lakum dinakum, every aspect of our life is part of our deen. Our work is part of our deen. Our work is part of our ibad. And when we approach it, we should have that understanding. So the ghayatul ubad is to understand that how this aspect of my life is connected to my deen. وَلِكُلِّ قَوْمٍ وَرَاعِ الْعَابِدِينَ الْعَقْلِ. Every nation has a leader, has a guide, has someone who's overseeing it, a shepherd, and the overseer or the guide of the servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is their aql. وَلِكُلِّ تَاجِرٍ بَضَاءَ وَبَضَاءَةُ الْمُجْتَهِدِينَ الْعَقْلِ. Every tajir, every person who does business, who does trade, who engages in interaction or social interaction, this individual has some sort of commodity, and the commodity of those who strive, and all of us should be striving towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is their intellect, al-aql. وَلِكُلِّ أَهْلِ بَيْتٍ قَيِّمٌ وَقَيُّمٌ وَقَيِّمُ الصِّدِّيقِينَ الْعَقْلِ. For every household, there's a foundation, and the foundation of that household should be their intellect, their aql. Again, why do we, and this is something that when we establish our households, why are we promoting our way of life within our household? Simply because it's a tradition of my father, my forefather. Yes, Islam is the best way of life, trust me. It is the best way of life. But are we encouraging and instilling that best way of life within our households based on what? Al-aql. Or simply based on our custom and tradition? Oh, no, this is done this way. It was always done this way. Or do we understand our deen as we should understand our deen? This is one of the points that Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, he emphasizes that if I see, he says, I will want to reprimand any of those who are our followers who have not understood their deen, who does not make effort to understand their deen. Imam Ali alayhi salatu, he stated that a person should read the Quran every day, 50 verses. But then we find also where the recommendation from Ahlul Bayt alayhim salatu is, yes, if you can read 50 verses a day, read that 50 verses. If you can read more, read more. But if you can read less, then read less. Read whatever you can. Even if, one ayat a day. That's easy for me. And be consistent about it. Learn one thing. In fact, Luqman al-Hakim, this is one of the advices that he gave to his son. He says, Ya bunay, that, oh my son, he says, make sure that in every day that you set aside time. He says, sa. Not necessarily 1 hour, but set aside time. Litalibi ilman. To study something, to learn something. Learn something that will benefit you in your life. Again, because if you are that mu'min, ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, alaykum bi anfusikum. Learn something that will benefit you in your life. Learn something that will help you, that will increase your ma'rifah and understanding. The Prophet Allah, he says, وَلِكُلِّ خَرَابٍ عِمَارَةٍ وَعِمَارَةُ الْآخِرَةِ الْعَقْلِ. He says, for every broken down place, there's you could say a builder. There's something that will bring that building up and correct that building. He says, وَإِمَارَةُ الْآخِرَةِ is your intellect. One of the, don't want to mention this interaction, but one of the friends of Imam Hassan al-Mushtaba alayhi salatu wasalam, this is in our Ruwayat and Kafi, he says this was a person who was majnoon. That, again, he would go in and out of this state of sanity and a state where his intellect was impaired. So one day, when he engaged with Imam Hassan al-Mushtaba alayhi salatu wasalam, Imam Hassan al-Mushtaba asked him, he says, كيف أصبحت بدأ? How are you today? And so this person, he said that, he says, I'm in a state where Allah is not happy and not pleased with me. Shaitan is not happy and not pleased with me. And I also am in a state that I'm not happy and pleased with me. I mentioned that hadith before. But the point where Imam Mujtaba asks him, he says, well, what is that state where you're not happy with? He says, I'm in a state where akhaful maut. I'm fearful of death. So this sparked a question among the people who were around Imam Hassan Mujtaba. He says, why do we fear death? So Imam Hassan Mujtaba, he responded, he says, that because, again, people focus so much on developing themselves in this world and they forget about the akhirah. So they don't want to transition from Darul Imara to Darul Qurba, that from a place that they've built up to a place that they've destroyed. So if we want to develop that place, then we use our intellect. As Imam Sadiq says, the intellect is that ma ubida bihi ar-Rahman, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is worshipped because of that. Again, when we apply our intellect and our understanding. MashaAllah, finish this hadith from Rasulullah. He says, وَلِكُلِّ إِمْرِئٍ عَقِبٌ يَنْسِبُ إِلَيْهِ وَيَذْكُرُ بِهِ وَيُذْكَرُ بِهِ وَعَقِبُ الصِّدِّيقِينَ الَّذِينَ يَنْسُبُونَ إِلَيْهِ وَيَذْكُرُونَ بِهِ الْعَقْلِ. It says that every person has a prodigy. Every person has offspring. He says that they're remembered by their offspring. So for example, if you say, oh, Jaffer ibn Abdullah. Why do you remember my father, Abdullah? Because my name is Jaffer. I'm the son of Jaffer. I'm the son of this person. But then the Prophet, he says, but the prodigy and the offspring of the Siddiqeen, those individuals who are truthful, those individuals who are, again, connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is also what the Siddiqeen are. He says that their offspring is their aql, and they're remembered by their aql and by their intellect. وَلِكُلِّ سَفَرٍ فِسْطَاطٍ وَفِسْطَاطُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ الْعَقْلِ. So, and for every travel, for every journey, there's a tent, there's a place to stay, there's a place of rest, a place where you seek your refuge, he says. And the fistatul mu'minin al-aql. That place of rest, that place of refuge is your aql, is your intellect, because that intellect should be connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he told Abi Darda, he said, izdadil aqla tazdadil min rabbika qurba. Tuzaddidu min rabbika qurba. He says, increase your intellect, because when you increase your intellect, you gain closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Subhanallah. Man arafa. Go back to that hadith of Amir al-Mu'minin. Man arafa nafsa arafa rabbah. And here the Prophet, he's saying that, look, increase your intellect. And if you increase your intellect, you will increase your closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we see that man arafa nafsa, man izdada aqla. So here the aql and the nafs, as we see, is one and the same in one aspect, from one dimension. So if you know yourself, you know Allah. If you increase your intellect, part of that increasing your understanding of yourself, understand that how you are also connecting to your deen. Are you connecting simply because it's tradition or this? No, this is not the way we connect to our deen. But understanding that this deen, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has stated, Al-Yawm akmaltu lakum deenakum, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us a solution for every aspect of our life. Spiritually, physically, mentally, financially, every aspect of our life, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us a solution. But we have to go and understand it. Abu Darda, he asks Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says, so how do I increase my how do I increase my intellect so that I gain closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So the Prophet tells him, he says, Ijtanib al-maharim, maharimillah, wa addi fara'idillah, wa takuna aqilan. He says first, he says, abstain from those things which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prohibited. And what are those things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prohibited? We mentioned it last night. Al-khaba'ith. Those things which are not good for us. Abstain from those things which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prohibited. وَأَدِّ فَرَائِدِ اللَّهِ, and fulfill those obligations of Allah. Whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made incumbent upon you, fulfill those things. Those things are which are tayyibat. Those things are things which are good for us, physically, spiritually, and mentally. He says, and if you do this, takun aqilan. A person who does this will become aqil, is intellectual, is applying their intellect. And notice that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's not saying, oh, go in depth in this, or he's not saying, oh, hey, learn what is mustahab and what's makruh. No, practice what is obligatory. Abstain from that which is haram. This is the most basic level. Yes, if you go deeper and you understand deeper, then again, as you increase your understanding, you increase your closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And again, that understanding, because the aqil is not someone who just simply understands or gains knowledge, but one who practices it, one who puts it into practice. And this is why the Prophet of Allah, he also follows up as he tells him, he says, if you do this, تكون عاقلا, then you're aqil, and he says, وَعَمَلْ بِالصَّالِحَاتِ مِنَ الْأَعْمَالِ تزددي في عاجل الدنيا ورفعة وكرامة وتنل من ربك قرب العز. He says, and then do what is righteous. Practice those things. And as you do, you will increase your closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And by doing that, again, it's just starting with those simple things. Starting with those simple things and gaining closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then we will develop that aspect of ourselves that needs to be developed. And when we increase our intellect and our understanding, our connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then we gain this aspect of our intellect, of our aql, that is called al-basira, to have insight, to have wisdom. One of the things that we are taught to pray for in many du'as. But where does it come in handy? As we increase our intellect, our closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then our eyes are open. We have this basira. Then whatever happens, whatever fitna that happens, whatever confusions that happens, because we have that basira, then we will not be taken this way or that way, that we will stay on that path towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Something that Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam, he also, he speaks about in Nahj Balagha, in the sermon 137 of Nahj Balagha. And this is with regards to the event of the Battle of Jamal. at what was happening, why people were confused. That Amir al-Mu'mineen, he was being blamed for something. Oh, well, he did not establish justice. And he says, and those people who are crying for justice, they're the ones, when we look at their actions prior to the murder of Uthman, he says, they're the ones who are fanning the flames. So why are they coming after me? He says, they themselves, that they are sharik. And if we look at the reality, I had nothing to do with it. He says, so if they really want justice and they're crying for justice, he says, إِنَّ أَوْلَ عَدْلِهِمْ لَحُكْمَ عَلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ. He says, in their first step of adl, of justice, they have to look at themselves first. They have to bring themselves to justice before they can bring anyone else to justice. Then Imam Ali, he says, وَإِنَّ مَعِيَ لَبَصِيرَتِي. He says that, again, I understand what is going on. I understand their game, if you want to say, put it in that way. مَا لَبَّسْتُ وَلَا لُبِّسَ عَلَيْهِ. He says, because I have this basira and I have this understanding. Again, there was no one that was parallel to the intellect and understanding of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam. He says, and because of that basira, he says, ma labbastu. Not at one moment have I cloaked over what is truth and what is right and what is just. وَمَا لُبِّسَ عَلَيْهِ. Nor has truth or justice ever been covered from my eyes. Again, with that basira, that we understand haqq and batil. That when we increase our intellect, we increase our connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One result of that is, again, to help with our mental wellness. Another result of that is what? That truth and justice will never be covered from us. When we see that there are a lot of people who want to put us in a state of confusion, put us in a state of stress and anxiety. Again, because they hide the truth, they don't disclose the truth. They put us in a state that, again, we're reacting with this or reacting against that, again, because we haven't developed that basira. And this was the state of Sham. This was the state of the Ummah during the time of Imam Hussein alayhi wasallam. After Muawiyah died, and some were thinking, oh, well, we'll make bay'ah to Hussein, but Yazid has this great army. Okay. Where was their intellect? Where was their aql? Where was their basira? Yes, you had people who were in the plains of Karbala. I mean, if you read who those individuals, some who were standing against Imam Hussein, they said they were hafiz of the Quran. Again, they had knowledge of the Quran, but they did not have that aql. Nor did they have that basira that they should have. And the worst state of it was that in Damascus at that time. And this is why Imam Zain Al-Abidin alayhi salatu, when he was asked that during this event of Karbala, during all of this tragedy, he says, what was the most difficult point? Imam Zain Al-Abidin alayhi salatu, he said 3 times, Asham, Asham, Asham. I want to give you 2 events from that. 2 or 3 events that when Imam Zain Al-Abidin, when the caravan was entering into Damascus, that what was happening? Why was it that Imam Zain Al-Abidin, he would tell one old man, he would say that, have you not read the Quran? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "La as'alukum alayhi ajran illa mawaddatan fil qurba." That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not ask any reward for this Quran, for this deen, this way of life that He has completed. Al-yawm akmaltu lakum. Asks nothing illa mawaddatan fil qurba, except for love of the near ones, love of the family of Rasul. And where was this love? Does it come in martyring and slaughtering one of the most beloved persons to Rasulullah? Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, was this love of Ahlul Bayt? Azadaru. Imanzar yadrako. Yadrako. Khiyalurako. That when the Ahlul Bayt, when they were going into Sham, just imagine the scene that is narrated in the Maktal. Sham ki auratain chatron ke upar se pani or aag. And this is from the words of Imam Zain Al-Abidin. He's describing that what it was like entering into Sham. On our heads, he says that a piece of fire, it landed on my amama. It landed on my amama and it caught a fire. And I couldn't do anything about it. Why? Because my hands were chained. And how was his hands chained? It was chained to the point that there was a chain around his neck and around his hands. So he cannot move his hand to throw the coal off of his amama. So his amama caught on fire. He says, "Isi wajh se main aag ko na baja saka, aur mera amama jal gaya, aur aag mera sar tak punch gayi, aur mera sar ko bhi jala diya." He says that the fire, it burnt my amama, it burned through my amama to the point that the fire, it reached the top of my head and it began to burn my head, and he could do nothing about this. When Imam Zain Al-Abidin, he says that most difficult point is Sham, Asham, Asham. These people who had no basira, who had no intellect. This is the Ahlul Bayt of Nabu. Another thing that happened as the Shuhada, their heads are being ushered into Damascus. The Ahlul Bayt are in chains. Another scene is described. Allahu Akbar. بالحجر صابت رأس الحسين فوق الذبح دام الوجنتين والزينب لتمت وجهها والصاحات وغوثا ومصيبة ومحمدا وعليا. It said that as they entered into Damascus, that someone came up to the head of Imam Hussein. This is Sayyid al-Shabab Ahl al-Jannah. This is what it is, Sibt al-Nabi, that they came and they hit the head of Imam Hussein with a rock. As they hit the head of Imam Hussein, this is a severed head of Imam Hussein. He had already been shaheed. That what harm can this head do? What harm can the Imam do? They hit the head of Imam Hussein with a rock to the point that blood began to run down, fresh blood began to run down the face of Imam Hussein. When Zainab, when she saw this scene, she began to cry out, is there anyone who will come to the aid of Ahlul Bayt? Wa ghawtha wa musibata. Is there anyone who will mourn this tragic scene? Wa Muhammada, O our grandfather, O Muhammad, O my father, O Ali. This was the state of Sham. This is the state of Sham. Agar bi zabani hali Imam Zain Al-Abidin guftim in ru in mi gov ay Shamiyan khande bi zakhmi jigar ma nazanid ay Shamiyan baz bana liye dhurriye Zahra nazanid ay Shamiyan digar ba sang sare baba nazanid. If we were listening to Imam Zain Al-Abidin, if he would describe his scene, what would he say? Would he be crying out that do not hit the head of my father, do not play in front of us, do not dance and celebrate in front of the Ahlul Bayt, among the Shuhada, among the family of Rasulullah? Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. اللهم بحق هذا المجلس الحسيني اغفر ذنوبنا واستر عيوبنا وقضي حوائجنا واشفي مرضانا وارحم أمواتنا وعجل فرج مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان واجعلنا من أعوانه وأنصاره والمستشهدين بين يديه وتحت لوائه بحق محمد وآله الطاهرين. ماتم الحسين.
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. Oh, Uncle Shining Moon, let me look one more time. Let me look at your eyes. Let me look at your face, pride and joy of Hassan. See how your uncle cries. See how your uncle cries. Qasim, Amana of your father. Qasim, Amana of my brother. Qasim, Amana of the Rasul. Qasim, Amana of Allah. Oh Qasim, 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 Qasim Shaheed. 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 Oh, Uncle Shining Moon, let me look one more time. Let me look at your eyes. Let me look at your face, pride and joy of Hassan. See how your uncle cries.
See how your uncle price Qasim, Amana of your mother Qasim, Amana of my brother Qasim, Amana of the Rasul Qasim, Amana of Allah, O Qasim, 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 Shaheed, 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 Qasim, 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 Shaheed. Oh, the joy of my heart, of Hassan you are part, how your uncle loves you. How can I let you go? In my care you should grow. God, you're only a child. God, you're only a child. Qasim, memory of my brother Qasim, last hope of your mother Qasim, handsome like no other Qasim. How can uncle see you go Qasim? Qasim, 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 Shaheed. 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 Oh, my little Qasim, how's your uncle did wish to see you grow into youth. See you married one day, hold your children and play. Karbala killed my wish. Karbala killed my wish. Qasim, so full of youth and life, my Qasim. This shouldn't be a child life, Qasim. How can I stand here, watch, oh Qasim? Soldiers killing my child, Qasim. Qasim, 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 Shaheed. 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 Curses to the one who lays in wait to kill my Qasim, oh my nephew. May my two eyes go blind, but do not let me see any harm come to you. Any harm come to you, Qasim? Horses are galloping, where is Qasim? Uncle is running, screaming, Qasim. Suddenly the dust dies down, Qasim. Pieces and pieces scattered, Qasim. Qasim, 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 Shaheed. 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 Take me back, take me to Karbala. Leave me there. Take me to Karbala. Leave me there. Take me to Karbala. Leave me there. Leave me there. Take me to Karbala. Leave me there. Take me to Karbala. Leave me there. Take me to Karbala. Leave me there. Leave me there. Hussein.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا رسول الله، الصلاة والسلام عليك يا نبي الله، الصلاة والسلام على المصطفى الأمجد، الصلاة والسلام على حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد ورحمة الله وبركاته. الصلاة والسلام على علي أمير المؤمنين وصي رسول رب العالمين. الصلاة والسلام على البضعة الطاهرة فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. الصلاة والسلام على الحسن المجتبى الولي الناصح الأمين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا، لا سيما سيدي ومولاي أبي الفضل العباس وأختي زينب. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى جدك وأبيك وعلى أمك وأخيك وعلى التسعة المعصومين من بنيك، لا سيما مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان عجل الله فرجه الشريف، وجعلنا من أعوانه وأنصاره والمستشهدين بين يديه في جملة أوليائه بمنك وفضلك ورحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصلى اللهم على محمد وآل محمد الطيبين الطاهرين.